Welcome to Takeaway Tuesdays. So I'm so excited to start this series with Omi. We've known each other, we've talked about working together. So I'm so excited that we're finally doing this. And the intention is both of us have unique expertise around CRM strategies, high level from the implementation aspect as well as the customer journey content piece. And so we're going to use this series to really help you, our audience, get more out of your CRM, find the gold in your CRM. So, Omi, why don't you start by introducing yourself and telling us a little bit about Diaz Cooper and how you guys got to be such experts. And I know you're like one of the HubSpot experts. You're everywhere. You run some of the workshops. You've really, embraced HubSpot. So tell us a little bit about that journey and why you love CRM so much.
Yeah, well, thanks. I'm super excited to be doing this with you. What your kind words really are very gratifying to me because I consider you to be also an expert in content marketing. You and your company are everywhere in that space as well. So excited to be here. So yeah, I'm Omi and I'm the co-founder of Diaz and Cooper. We're a platinum HubSpot partner, and we actually just got our accreditation for platform enablement. And that's really showcases one of the reasons why I love CRM so much. Because for me, it's not about the technology, it's about the human beings that are using that technology. And so, what is gratifying to me and the successes that we've been able to achieve are really around our customers being able to utilize the tool fully, embrace it, and have their teams utilize it in an effective way that's going to help them to grow their business, right? I think that's why it's so exciting to me.
Absolutely, and so needed. And congratulations on the accreditation on being a, what is it, platform
Enablement. Yeah.
enablement. Huge, huge. Well, HubSpot too. I mean, they just keep adding so much to the software that if you're not someone who's constantly studying it up to date, it's just gonna outgrow you just by the nature of how they're growing and really adding capabilities and features. So I love that you guys really help your audience make the most of it. And that really dovetails nicely into why we've started integrating more of the CRM piece into the content piece. People ask me like, how did you make that jump? Like, why did you make that jump? Because up until a couple years ago, if you looked at our website and looked at our offerings, it was really kind of standalone content. And yes, would we implement it into your CRM? Of course, but we never really truly integrated. And a couple years ago, someone made like an offhand remark to me that if you have more than 10,000 contacts in your CRM, you've got $1 million just like waiting to be achieved. And it really resonated with me. And whether it's a million or 100,000, it's the idea that there's significant revenue that you've already got that you're not leveraging. And so we started looking at how we were using HubSpot and realized we were leaving so much on the table because over the years, we had so many people owning our HubSpot, going in and doing, their version of what was right, that it just became a mess. And we really were so focused on always going after new, 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 that we weren't actually nurturing the contacts that were, I guess to use the terminology, middle of the funnel, middle of the flywheel contacts. And so when we started paying more attention and started, leveraging HubSpot the way it was supposed to be, we did find that gold. And that's often how we launch new products and services. We do it for ourselves. Did it work? And then we expanded out to our audience. So we've really seen the benefit that when content aligned to the CRM, there is a lot of gold there that just hasn't been mined yet. So that's what our expertise is, really more from the content piece and how that aligns with the customer journey and how you're using the CRM to map that out. But it's been really great for us and our customers.
I'm really glad you brought that up because you're not alone. Like there are so many people that are paying for CRM and other MarTech solutions, and they're not fully utilizing, they're not finding that gold, as you so aptly said. And so you're right, it takes a combination of the right implementation in the CRM, perhaps even integrating with other systems and having the right content at the right moments during the customer journey. That should be a helpful thing for us to talk about with our
Absolutely.
audience. Yeah.
So, what I want to do now is I want to kind of dig in a little bit more to your expertise and ask a few questions where we can really go after some problems that most companies are facing and give some takeaways on how to go after them. So, the first thing is kind of the growth gap. What are some of the most common gaps you see in HubSpot implementation that hold companies back from scalable growth?
Yeah, there's a couple really big ones. One of the biggest that I see a lot is that, especially with larger firms, they might have separate systems for their buyer data. So like an ERP or a fulfillment system. They might have a separate system for their customer service data. Maybe it's a ticketing system or some other surveying, and polling system. And all of those are disconnected from their actual CRM. A lot of times that causes misalignment with sales and marketing, but even worse, there's no complete picture of the full customer journey. So from the time someone first hears about you through when they become a loyal customer, you don't have a complete data to be able to build upon and be able to fully utilize your CRM with that type of data. So that to me is the number one reason for underutilization or having a growth gap, is not having that data or having it in siloed systems. And the second really big one is dirty data.
Mm,
Right. So outdated data, incorrect emails, bad formatting, people move companies and the data doesn't keep up, things like
yeah,
that can really hinder. You can have the perfect HubSpot setup and you can
yeah,
have the most wonderful content and copy, but if it's not reaching the right people because you have dirty data, that's going to really hold you back.
yeah. And that dirty data can be like a creep that just, starts happening until eventually it's like, and then that just creates more issues because then if you're sending out communication and you're not fixing that, then it's creating, the statistics that then, just start building on each other. So like nothing's working anymore. And that's the root cause. So talk to me a little bit about, what's the value of having a company like yours guide the implementation versus a self-serve. And I remember when we were initially sold on HubSpot, I think HubSpot does a great job of making it seem so easy, right? Because what they're showing you, all the demos and everything, is kind of like already the done stage, not the what it took to get done. And so I think there's an inherent thinking that, oh, this will be easy. I can do it myself, or I'll have my admin do it, right? Like more often than not, it's a leadership position that might be making the decision because of the cost associated, but then the delegation to like someone on the team who's like at a lower level position because they think, oh yeah, that person can do it. So talk to me a little bit about what you see as some of the pitfalls that companies make and how utilizing a company like yours can really have them hit the ground running and start generating results faster.
Whether you try to do it yourself or not is often an internal decision. And I'm going to just say it. One of our number one sources of clients is people who've had failed CRM implementations.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is not that they abandoned the tool necessarily, but that they're not fully utilizing it. They don't trust the data. They don't feel like the reporting is correct, or they don't even know what they don't know and are not fully utilizing all of the things that they've paid for, right? So there are two really big reasons why you should use a HubSpot partner to help you with your onboarding and your customization and optimization of HubSpot. The first one is that I would tend to choose someone that has experience in my area of industry, right? So if I'm a B2B aviation company, if I'm a travel agency, if I'm in those spaces, I'm going to choose Diaz and Cooper, right? Because that's our area of expertise. I wouldn't necessarily take on like a law firm or something like that because I don't know those case uses as well, or
Yeah.
those use cases rather as well. So finding someone that knows your industry is crucial because they'll know the quick wins. They'll know the types of campaigns you tend to run. They'll know the typical internal systems, those ERPs or those
Yeah.
systems. They'll know the ones that are specific to your industry and that can be integrated with HubSpot, for example. So looking at someone that has the right industry experience is one aspect of it. The other aspect of it is HubSpot is a little bit of a double-edged sword. Yes, you're absolutely right. They make it look really easy. It actually is built to
Yeah.
be easy to use. So from the user's perspective, it can be a very easy to use, but to get it there, to
Yeah.
get it so it's easy to use for you, to get it so that it's optimized for your particular use case, to have those quick wins, those things that are unique to your business that you want to be able to take advantage of right away. That really does take someone with deep expertise because it's so flexible, it's so powerful, it's such a robust system. There's so much you can do with it. But in order to take full advantage of that, someone needs to set it up for you so that it can do, so that it can do those things and be easy for you to use. So I can't tell you how many times I've had clients come to us saying, we've used it for a while and we don't trust the data, where it's not set up for us. We're not sure how to, and sometimes it's easy to fix and
Right.
sometimes it really requires more deep customization.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's a great lead in to, you mentioned earlier that a lot of times companies don't even know what they signed up for and they're underutilizing what they're paying for. What are some of the, tools and features that you see most that are underutilized by the companies you work with?
I think one of the biggest ones is sales forecasting. So
Mm,
HubSpot has some really great AI powered tools to help with sales forecasting, but that's one of the areas where it takes a lot of making sure that everything is correct, that data is flowing in correctly, that all the salespeople are using the tool correctly, that any kind of third party tools, calling tools or other tools are either correctly implemented, integrated with HubSpot, or that we're using native HubSpot tools for those functions. So if that's all in place, sales forecasting can be super powerful for teams. And then another really good one is the predictive lead scoring. So again, very sales oriented. And if you don't have a good lead scoring model in place, if you haven't customized that for your own business, then that tool, is not going to be useful to you at all.
yeah, no, those are great. Those are really strong ones that can really, again, make HubSpot so important to leadership, right? Because I think that's also
Yep.
another thing that happens is it's relegated to sales or marketing. There might be some customer service stuff where I think if those things are in place, it really is a compelling tool dashboard for leadership to look at to see the health of the company, what's in the pipeline, what's working, what's not, which again, that's what leadership should be looking at, which I think
Mm-hmm.
then creates, you know, viewing HubSpot as not just another tool in the toolbox, which it is, but also a tool that can help your business be successful, which I think is the more appropriate way to look at it. Tell us, give us a success story of where you've, been able to go in and through you guys' efforts and getting it set up correctly, turn it into a rev engine.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's one of our, catchphrases about, turning your CRM into a revenue engine And we've had a recent success. As a matter of fact, it is the case study that we use for our platform enablement accreditation. And that's with our client, Unical Aviation. So the last couple of years in the aviation industry, a lot of companies in that space are really looking at digital transformation and how can they use their tools better. And so this is a company that's a global leader in that, space, especially in the aftermarket parts space, right? And they were using siloed tools for one. So they had an ERP that was, kind of a legacy tool. And a lot of the sales teams were using their own spreadsheets. Their data was all over the place. And so, really, the HubSpot project became a transformation of their entire sales processes. So, we not only onboarded them onto HubSpot and integrated their ERP data into HubSpot, but we also integrated their Power BI analytics and their Vista quote, the quotes coming in, so that what we did is we gave them a system so that the salespeople could not only report correctly back to leadership, as you mentioned, that's just so important. They want to understand what is the ROI of this investment, right? But also they could really stay on top of their most important deals, so that the better salespeople, the more senior salespeople, are now being handed the leads that are the biggest deals, the most important deals. And then the ones that are more lower funnel or lower value can be nurtured up to the point where then it makes sense to follow up on them. So that was it was a big project because they had a lot of systems, but that was a very clear example of using HubSpot and using a customized implementation in order to have the company be able to accelerate and propel their sales forward.
Wow, that's impressive. Those guys must love you.
Yeah, they gave us a good review, so
Yeah, that's
great.
great. That's
Yeah.
great. Talk to me a little bit. I did mention before, like how often, there's not necessarily one person that owns HubSpot, the CRM. Sometimes it's sales, sometimes it's marketing, sometimes both are in there. Sometimes they are working together, sometimes they're not. Talk to me a little bit about, your perspective and the role HubSpot plays in truly aligning sales and marketing for, more predictable growth.
Yeah. So obviously, it starts with the fact that you're sharing a contact database. So from the beginning, marketing knows where in the customer journey a customer might be, right? And sales will have the information of what have they touched, what have they looked at, maybe what pages in the website were important to that prospect, so that you can talk to them about the things that are important to the prospect. Again, it's about bringing the human into the system, right?
Yeah.
So to me, the more shared data between sales and marketing, the better, because they can serve the prospect and the client a lot better in the long run. I mentioned lead scoring earlier. That's another really good way to align sales and marketing, right? I'm a big believer that the sales and marketing team should have an SLA in place
Yeah.
to say, let's agree on what makes a good lead. Let's agree on when a lead should be handed from the marketing department to the sales department, and let's agree on the time frames that sales will take in order to follow up with that lead. Once that's in place, it just flips that relationship from an adversarial one of, oh, marketing doesn't deliver good leads or whatever, or marketing saying, sales doesn't follow up, or, whatever, right? That blame game gets eliminated and becomes more of a collaboration between the teams, because at the end of the day, both teams are tasked with the same thing: to grow
Yeah.
the revenue of the company, right? They're doing it from different angles and at different stages of the funnel or the flywheel, but at the end of the day, they are going to be working together to help grow the company's revenue. And I think when they focus on that, and the CRM can help them focus on that, they can be more successful together.
Yeah, that's amazing. My director of operations would love you around the SLA because she's such a proponent But every time we've ever talked to a company about it, they don't have one, they don't know what it is. So I was finally like, stop talking about that. Because
Yeah.
but with the way you just described it, I mean, it's so necessary. And when that's in place, it really does create that more of that collaboration. And, again, marketing and sales tasked with the same thing. We got to grow, and
Mhm.
got to work together to do that. So fantastic. Well, those were just amazing takeaways. I'm gonna hand the reins over to you and let you ask me some questions and dive in a little bit.
Super excited for this part. All right. The first thing I want to ask you about is we have talked a little bit throughout about the customer journey. I really want to understand how you strategically map out content for the different stages of that journey.
Yeah, so in my mind, when I think about what is one of the most valuable reasons to have a CRM, it is to align it to the customer journey and really think about what is that customer journey? How do your prospects initially learn about you? And then what type of content do they need to take the next step so that when they are learning about you, they're getting the information that's building that trust, that's building that authority, that's really helping solve problems. So it's really breaking down the customer journey. I mean, there's, a bunch of different ways to do it, but awareness, consideration, decision are kind of the three biggest chunks, right? And when you think about your company from that perspective, then we really support our customers in helping them determine what's going to be most effective for that customer at that stage that's going to move them along. And so a lot of times in the early stages, it's a lot of educational content, it's a lot of how-to content. It's not super sales oriented, right? It's really you're building trust, you're being helpful. And then as they move along the journey to consideration, they're going to want meatier content. They're going to want to dig more into case studies, to
Mm,
educational events, maybe comparison guides to really understand how what you're offering compares and is better than the competition. So it requires a different type of content. And then the decision stage, which if you're nurturing those leads, you're constantly reaching out to them. Again, this is where sales and marketing can work so well together because there's only so many times a salesperson's going to be able to reach out and say, how's it going? Are you ready yet? What's going on? Where having additional content to support that stage, like testimonials, maybe, free trials, demos, ROI calculators, things that help really get that lead to the decision stage, working closely with sales. So that's kind of how we look at it. And then utilizing tools like HubSpot workflows. So, when we were talking about, tools that most companies or some companies aren't utilizing in their HubSpot, those workflows, those sales sequences, those automations can be amazing sales lubricant, right? To really support, but not just a one size fits all where you're sending the same thing out to the entire database. You're sending out the kind of content that they're looking for based on that stage.
that's key right there. And that's a big part of being a lot more human centric in your
Yes.
communications. So, we talked a little earlier about some of the gaps or missed opportunities when it comes to implementation, but I'd love to get your take on what are you seeing are some of the common content missed opportunities when using HubSpot?
Yeah, so I touched on one already. I mean, I think the workflows, the automation, the sequences are really such a great tool that almost feel like you have another team member, or in some instances, a whole team doing work on your behalf if set up properly, right? So it
Mhm.
is, the setup has to be, but in order to create that properly, you've got to have the personalization, right? You've got to have the right segmentation so you can deliver the right content. So setting up that consistent personalization so that you know what stage your contacts are at and then can align the appropriate content so that they're getting what they need is one of the most underutilized features because it takes work, right? It's not necessarily easy. Yes,
Mm.
HubSpot can make it easy, but doing it and then creating the content is, not always something that a company has the internal resources to do. I think a big one is, and this is again how we kind of became more CRM experts, is ignoring that middle of the funnel content.
Mm.
So often companies are focused on new, 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 that they often skip the nurturing content to, okay, now we've got these leads. Yeah, maybe they didn't convert right away. That's normal. How are you going to stay engaged with them and offer them ongoing value so that you can convert them? And so again, a lot of companies, they just skip developing that content, those comparison guides, those explainer videos to really get those warm leads more interested and really address them. And then the last one is a lot of companies ignore the data insights and ignoring, and you touched on this when you were talking about aligning sales and marketing, but using the analytics to identify what's working, what's not. Let's double down on what's been successful. Let's change up what's not working, but letting the data drive some of the decisions and some of the additional content that needs to be created. So I think those are the three things that I would say can really help a company be more successful with their growth strategies.
I love that. And that's a great segue to my next question because now the companies have invested money in their tech stack, right? They've invested money in optimizing it and implementing things, and they've invested a lot of time and effort and money into their content. So how do they show that ROI to the
Yeah.
executives, right? Tell me a little bit about how businesses are measuring the success of their content strategy.
Yeah, I think there's a few different ways. Tracking attribution reports in HubSpot to see which pieces of content influence deals and revenue. And that can be really inspiring when you see a piece of content that, has increased revenue by 200%, 300%, which we see all the time. Measuring the basics, engagement metrics, right? Clicks, opens, downloads for each piece of content. And again, not just assuming if you're not getting good metrics, okay, that doesn't work, let's do something else. But sometimes it's as simple as switching up a subject line or, a CTA button color. I mean, there's a lot of different things you can do to test, and HubSpot gives you really great like A/B testing mechanisms that can help you, determine even if it's 1%, 2% improvements, those can add up and really make a difference. And then those conversion rates. So, within HubSpot, when you're creating forms, landing pages, and those various CTAs, see what's converting better, and, rinse and repeat. So I think those are some of the big ones. And then really aligning the content performance to pipeline progression metrics, which again, you touched
Mhm.
on, time to close, deal value growth, like those things that can give you more insight. So leadership's not expecting, okay, a lead comes in, why hasn't it closed yet? Now you've got some data to really create that predictability, which now like how strong is my pipeline? What revenue can I expect based on historical data, which again can just really make your company so much more powerful because you know what to expect, which can then impact other areas of your business like staffing and resources.
I want to go back a little bit because you talked earlier about that middle of the funnel and finding that gold in maybe
Yeah.
re-engaging. So I'd love to hear what kind of content are you seeing works best in to nurture those leads and to use in those lead nurturing workflows so that you can stay engaged with, those people that have kind of raised their hands but may not be ready to buy
Sure.
yet.
I mean, certainly the type of content is going to be dependent on the industry and the type of prospect. So there isn't necessarily a one size fit all. But
Mhm.
in general, email series work really well. I think a lot of times companies think if they're sending out too many emails, they're going to get too many opt-outs. So they hesitate from sending out series. And what we know is, people's inboxes are inundated. So more emails are sometimes necessary, and it might make, you a bit uncomfortable. But if you think about your own experience, often it's those things you opted into where you are getting 2 or 3 emails a week, and that is creating value and you're moving along the journey because you're now engaging more versus once a month, which used to work, believe it or not. You used to be able to send out, an email once a month to your database and get some good interaction. That's no longer the case. So I think those series are really important and building, along a theme and not just trying to put everything in one email, but chopping it up into short bite-sized pieces so it's more consumable. I think video content we know is, becoming more and more important for different types of audiences, right? Because everyone consumes content differently, but short, engaging explainer videos, not everyone wants to sign up for that demo. Sometimes they want to just, watch something quick to see, hey, I want to see how this piece works or that piece works. So I think giving, those short, engaging videos is really a great piece of middle of the funnel content. Case studies, right? There's nothing better than showing what you've done for others and how that may impact them. And that can be, you know, done in different formats and all of the above formats, right? You can do written, then you can do video takeaways, you can do short snippets. And I really love interactive type tools. I think, those quizzes or calculators where you're getting valuable information, but you're also able to give something immediately to the user, like give something of value. I just love those type of tools, and I think those create a lot of engagement. So those would be kind of the four, if I had to put them into one bucket, the four that I would highlight.
I often wonder why companies are like so scared of opt-outs. I think opt-outs are great because, we're getting rid of people that aren't interested. And like you mentioned, if you're sending, frequent but more consumable and more relevant content, then they're going to appreciate that because you're providing value before you're trying to extract value, right? So having said that, we all have those stale leads sitting around in our CRM of either inactive or old leads that we haven't touched in a long time or that haven't engaged with us. Tell me a little bit about how you're seeing content can be used to re-engage those stale or inactive leads.
Yeah, so part of this issue is if you aren't sending out enough emails, a lot of your contacts will automatically go into kind of inactive, right? Because maybe they skipped a month or two, so now it's been 90, 120 days and they haven't opened an email. So all of a sudden they appear inactive where maybe they're not. It's just you haven't been interacting with them. So that's why going back to, email sequences is really important because that happens and that can have a whole segment of your audience be relegated to inactive when they may not be. So paying attention to that is really key. Once they're in that bucket though, you do want to treat them a bit differently and you don't want to just keep inundating them. You want to acknowledge that they haven't been active and do they want to be? So sending like, we miss you, you need to opt back in, otherwise we're going to delete you. I mean, you would say it more friendly than that, but there's, just really going after them very targeted, but offering very updated, exclusive resources, discounts, things that show them. And again, you're going to have some rapid fire because if you only are sending out a few every now and then, you're just not going to be able to re-engage them. Certainly sharing those new case studies, success stories, creating those trigger-based workflows that reintroduce your value proposition. So if they click on something within the email, it might, trigger a different sequence based on what they clicked on. So that really shows that you're paying attention and it feels more personal. And then, using retargeting features that HubSpot has to perhaps try to go after them a different way, right? So maybe you're not going to get them through email because I don't know, your emails just aren't getting through to them for some reason, or they've just ignored your emails. Maybe you're going to need to go after them with the retargeting with personalized ads and show up somewhere else where they're like, oh yeah, I forgot about that company. Yeah, they did this great thing for me. And then that could re-engage them. So I think you've got to be a bit creative sometimes and not just use the one prong approach.
Yeah, I love that. In addition to those great ones that you mentioned, we've seen success also with like we want to hear from you type of an email where maybe they get to pick the type of content that they're interested in, and that also kind of informs you about what their interests are, and you can hit them with more targeted things that are a lot more relevant to them. So yeah, those
Yeah.
are all, great things to think about when you're looking at some of these old or stale leads in your CRM.
Yeah, I always love when I get, if I'm opting out of something or I get that email from a company that, gives me some options because maybe it's not like I want to opt out from everything.
Yes.
Maybe at one point I signed up for every newsletter and now I'm like, you know what? Like, let's hold the phone. I don't need so much. And giving that option where again, I can choose how often I want to hear from them. So I think, as much personalization as you can do. And you said it at the beginning, and we refer a lot of times to ourselves as a content company, but it's really all about connection, right? At the end of the day, that's all we care about is the content that we're creating helping you connect with your target audience to build that relationship. And that's the ultimate goal is building relationships because that's what matters. And, if you're a company that's relying on AI tools or, so many things that are more impersonal, I just believe that that's not going to get you far because people like to do business with people they know, like, and trust. And so
Mhm.
that's the lens that we look at content through is through connection and relationships, not just more content for the sake of more content.
Yeah, absolutely. Using the tools that you have, yes, you can increase your efficiency with AI, you can increase your efficiency with workflows, but doing it in a way that keeps that human interaction alive. Because at the end of the day, it's a human to human, right? Nobody wants to buy from something that they don't trust and that they don't know something about. So, very valid point. And yeah, thank you for these insights. I'm really excited
Yeah,
for
that
our
was
next one.
a perfect way to end. And yeah, I think these were some amazing takeaways and insights, and it'll be interesting to see what we dig into next. We covered a lot today. I'm feeling like maybe next time we'll take like one thing and go deeper. So
Love
stay
that.
tuned, right?
Yeah, love that. We'll see you next time.